that he said he would never own an Evora or any Lotus again. If you talk to any car salesman about what they do during the day, if they're honest with you, they'll probably say they sit around a lot twiddling their thumbs. And particularly early in your career in car sales, before you've sort of built up a customer base to sort of call upon to do repeat deals, you do sit around a lot. And particularly in an exotic store where 90 to 95% of the people that walk through the doors have no means or intention to buy a car anytime soon, you do a lot of tour guiding and drinking coffee and, reading the internet. But I learned early on that even though I had some terrific customers who were going to buy 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 cars a year, that really didn't keep me busy enough. And so I started to call upon a lot of used car dealers, and particularly independent exotic car stores. They would always need inventory. So I could literally sell those guys a car just about any day. So I would look through our trades and things like that and offer them around and usually make a little bit of profit and move a lot of cars. But they don't buy new cars. And the manufacturers and my boss always wanted me to sell a lot of new cars, and generally I would, but one month I was just having a really slow time. And so I had this idea to sort of have myself a personal challenge to see if I could put together 4 trade assist deals. And you might have never heard of trade assistance, but it probably happens more often than you think, and it's actually related to lemon law. Lemon law is something that protects consumers from manufacturers fundamentally selling them defective cars. And if you have a repeated service issue, your car might be subject to lemon law. And it depends on your state, but in most states, if you have the same issue 3 times, if your car is down for more than 30 days, or if you have a repeated safety-related issue with your car, you can invoke lemon law and you can use a lawyer to compel the manufacturer to buy the car back. And it's not an easy process, but it works, and it's designed to protect consumers. And that's sort of what dealers exist, sort of to mediate and moderate that type of exchange and the deals that tend to happen there, because it's not really in the interest of the manufacturer, as you might imagine, to end up buying the car back. It hurts their reliability statistics, and they end up owning a car that's worth very little because it has a branded title. In the same way that a car would have a branded title if it were salvaged and then rebuilt or stolen and then recovered, a lemon law car has a branded title. And the manufacturers will in general sell them back to the dealers as used inventory that would then be marketed and disclosed as having been a lemon car. So that hurts the value considerably, and most banks will not finance them. So it's in the best interest of the manufacturer to use trade assistance when it's necessary to avoid lemon law. And in most cases, the consumer still wants a car, they just want one that works. And so the dealer can sort of step in and ask for trade assistance. And it generally involves looking at the person's trade and what it's really worth as it is, eventually figuring out what it's probably going to take to get it fixed so that it can just be sold as a normal used car, and then look at what they might want to buy and kind of what that gap is that the manufacturer might need to make up. Because the alternative is, if we let it go all the way to lemon law, they've got a lot of legal expenses that end up being the responsibility for reimbursement by the manufacturer, the full purchase price, taxes, any interest paid on a loan, and it gets really expensive, and it makes everybody not like each other. On the other hand, if this guy just doesn't like this car, but he wants that car, and the manufacturer just wants that to go back into the used inventory and not really be their problem, it usually doesn't take that much money to make a deal. But it creates a deal where one wouldn't exist. And that month, that's what I needed. So we represented Lamborghini, Aston Martin, McLaren, and Lotus. And I didn't fancy myself shrewd enough to negotiate multiple trade assist deals with the same manufacturer at the same time, so I figured I need one of each. So I had an Aston Martin customer who had come to me a couple of years prior to that with a DB9 to trade. And he was about $80,000 upside down in a car worth about 50 grand. And what had happened was he bought a car in 2007 and paid all the money for it and financed it for a long time and didn't put that much money down and ended up with a catastrophic amount of negative equity. And he didn't want to write a big check to trade, so we were really looking for something to bury that in. And the only thing that would work was a Virage. When Aston brought out the Virage right between the DB9 and the DBS, nobody bought it. And they sat around for a year, and then they gave us a huge incentive. We could probably discount one $70,000 or $80,000 off sticker to sell. And so it worked perfectly, because even though the incentive was there, banks would still generally loan MSRP for a good credit customer on a brand new car. So we buried pretty much all of it, and he got to drive a new Aston Martin. So he was elated, but he started to have a lot of transmission issues with the car. And it turned out that there was something wrong with the way that one of the sensors was plugged into the transmission control unit. But it took a long time to figure that out, and it was in several times before we could really replicate it enough. And he was starting to get upset because it was a long way from his house to the dealership, and he had mentioned lemon law. Now, as a dealer, my franchise agreement says I can't initiate those types of discussions. I can answer questions about it and direct them to attorneys and things like that, but until it becomes a trade assist opportunity, it's not really something I can say the first word about. But it's important that in this case, he had already brought it up and was interested in trying to find something that was possible. And at some point he wanted a Vanquish, but he also really liked this V12 Vantage S we had just gotten. And so I called the manufacturer and said, look, we've got this guy, his car's been down a whole lot of days, he's getting upset, but I think we could probably make a deal. But his Virage is worth this and the Vantage is worth this, so I'm probably gonna need about this much money to make a deal, or else I do think he's gonna take it all the way to lemon law. So they kind of went back and forth, and eventually they granted it. So I had my first deal done. The Lamborghini one I knew was going to be a little bit more challenging because quite honestly, the V10 cars never broke and the V12 cars don't usually get driven that much. But the Aventadors were breaking occasionally with the solenoid issue that I mentioned in another video, but it was kind of rare for it to go much beyond that, and that usually only took a few days. But I did have one customer with an Aventador that had required 2 transmission replacements. It was an early Aventador Roadster and it had been down for a while, but the guy was a great customer. He'd bought a bunch of cars. He was just getting frustrated with the fact that he was without his car so often. And so he had mentioned the question of lemon law and things like that to me, but the car hadn't really depreciated that much. So in that case, it's actually a really good opportunity for the manufacturer to do something that seems very nice for the customer, but really doesn't cost them that much. Because we could sort of take the new car profit off a car that they hadn't allocated to us and get his used car sold for a strong market value like they were bringing, and it didn't cost them much to make this guy really, really happy. So they kind of jumped at that opportunity, and I moved his car to another used car dealer that was happy to have it, and he ordered a brand new one. So that was 2 deals down. McLarens, they break all the time, so there's always something, but they're not really that big of a deal, and it's a lot of software updates, so it's kind of hard to get one down for 30 days, and they're usually not safety related, it's just electrical quirks and things like that. But I had a guy who had a 12C coupe, and it had some problems, so I got him a 12C Spider, and then it had some problems, and he really wanted a 650S, but the 650 had come out and really made the 12Cs depreciate so badly that he didn't want to write the check. And he was starting to sort of grumble about lemon law and things like that, but he didn't know much about it. So he was just asking me some questions, and I said, look, no, before you go that way, let me talk to these guys, and let me tell them kind of where you're at, what you're looking to do, and that if they'll chip in a little bit to make this deal happen, you'll be a happy customer. And he was like, all right, see what you can do. And so I talked to them, and they were hearing a lot about things like this because, they're not the most reliable cars on earth. But they eventually said, yes, we need to move more 650s because they weren't flying off the shelf. And they chipped in a bit. I got his car sold, and everybody ended up happy. The Lotus deal was a little bit different, and I mentioned it, or at least alluded to it in a previous video, but we had this customer whose car just had all these build quality issues, and it would creak and rattle and squeak, and it was really miserable to drive. And this is the guy that told me that he would just crank his Adele up all the way so that her screaming would sort of overcome all the noises and ridiculousness of the car. This customer was actually the only customer that I ever saw get trade assistance for a car to buy something from another manufacturer, because he was so upset with the build quality issues on his Evora S that he said he would never own an Evora or any Lotus again. And so he wanted something else, and he really had his eye on this Vantage. So we told Lotus, like, hey, I think you're going to end up having to buy this thing back, but if you'll chip in to this deal, I can get this car sold and I can put him in this Aston with an incentive, and it's not going to cost that much, and I think it puts you in a lot better position. And they were actually really grateful at that suggestion. So they sent us a check and we got the deal done, and everybody ended up happy. So I went 4 for 4 that week in getting these trade assist deals done and got 4 new units on the board, but it was a weird week for sure, and the manufacturers were not looking for me to call again the next week.
Are you looking to buy your dream car? Premier Financial Services offers the flexibility of financing with the tax benefits of leasing. The PFS Simple Lease offers quick approvals and easy termination when you are ready for the next car. Visit our website and follow us for more.